Joining me now in the studio, kicking us off tonight, writer and broadcaster Candice Holdsworth, and Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens is here as well. Candice, welcome to the show. Crash, bang, wallop, I suppose you might start off with. I mean, the return of David Cameron, the sacking of Suella Braverman, just an amazing day, really.
It is. That is the political comeback that no one foresaw. I mean, it wasn't even leaked at all. No one even revealed it.
Yeah.
And it must have been going on for some time that they were in talks with David Cameron to do this. This isn't something he decided overnight.
Right.
Especially because he had to be made a lord to do this role.
Well, I guess they'd have to check that you could do that. And a lot of people are not happy about the fact that he's suddenly become a lord out of nowhere as well. And therefore, he won't really be able to answer for any of the policy decisions that the government makes and that he carries out. But also, you know, it was only a couple of days ago that the famous sort of football manager quote came out from Rishi Sunak that he had great confidence in Suella Braverman. I'm assuming that come Sunday night and Monday morning, he just couldn't take any more of the kind of the two fingers salute from her, where she was simply just rubbing his nose in it.
Well, I just wonder, though, if she had an inkling of this. She must have done. I mean, did this come as a shock? He must have been planning this for a while, because this is a real shift in strategy now. You know, it's clear that he's like, well, what I've been doing so far isn't working. It's not moving the dial. I've been trying to do something with net zero. I've done a bit with HS2. I've appealed to the right of the Tory party, and I'm still down in the polls. So I'm going to go down the centrist route. Right.
I think he must have been thinking that way. Let's call Peter Hitchens into the fray, because, Peter, you've in the past, with me, very vociferously blamed David Cameron for kind of ruining the Conservative Party and making it into a sort of Blairite temple, if you like, of worship at the feet of Tony Blair. You must have been surprised of all people today.
Well, of course I was surprised, but not shocked. You know, the event surprised me, but the fact is that the Tory party, when David Cameron took it over, was the object of a putsch, a coup d'etat, by the Blairites, who decided that they would take it over. Blair himself and his allies had been saying since the early part of the century that the Tory party wouldn't be allowed back into office until it adopted their policies. And David Cameron took it upon himself to do that and proclaimed himself at a not very private dinner to be the heir to Blair, and proceeded to be that in almost every conceivable way once he came into office. And that's what he represents. And he then tried to sacrifice the country to save the Tory party in his ridiculous referendum, which has caused an unlimited constitutional crisis in the country. And as we see now in the Conservative Party, not over yet. His return, I think, may possibly signal an event which once I would have longed and wished for, but now don't think will lead very far, which is a natural split in the Conservative Party and the defection of quite large numbers of people to the Farage direction, which I think now must be a very strong possibility. There's no other message which the remaining social, moral and political conservatives in the party could get from having David Cameron reappearing. His appearance back as a major figure in government, he will be much more, by my guess, than Foreign Secretary, is going to make people say, oh, well, in that case, we've been rejected, we're not wanted. And there really isn't any reason why we should take sides between one lot of Blairites and Keir Starmer's Blairites. I can still see an argument for actually trying to keep Keir Starmer's Blairites out, because they have a lot of energy and they have a lot of plans to do things, whereas the Tory party is a tired bladder. But I don't think that's going to persuade many people to come out and vote for the Tories now.
No, I don't think it is. And Candice, I mean, I've been seeing all day people saying, I've torn up my card, this is the final straw, this is the last mistake I'm going to see Rishi Sunak make, because it is kind of heading, in some ways, for an oblivion against all of the things that they got elected to do in 2019, isn't it? It
is. I mean, I wonder what's going to happen with the Red Wall voters now. I mean, that sort of seems to be forgotten, that winning strategy. It's almost like the last 7 years never happened. And we want to pretend that they never happened. And we want to go back to the world that was normal pre-Brexit and all the debates that have arisen since then. I just wonder, I mean, maybe they're just trying whatever they can, because they've got nothing to lose right now. And I do know that Suella Braverman, she's kind of seen as this lightning rod, and she attracts all this ire from those on the left, but also from the so-called centrists.
Yes.
And they don't like her, and they're very happy she's gone, and they're very happy David Cameron is back now.
And it rather feeds into this narrative, Peter, if I can come back to you, that there is a kind of rottenness at the heart of the Tory party, that, you know, there are people who work within it to ruin people, to get them out. And I think I find most amazing about David Cameron is the way people are talking about him, as if he's some kind of senior statesman. I've heard some pundits this evening regarding him as an expert on the Middle East, a man who will be seen there as somebody who can be respected, which is laughable after what happened in Libya, isn't it?
Well, it's comical. I mean, the idea that David Cameron is a safe pair of hands and somebody who can be trusted with great offices of state because he occupied very badly the office of Prime Minister for some years is absurd. His performance over Libya remains as bad, if not worse, than that of Blair over Iraq. And he's got away with it largely in the public mind for reasons I don't fully understand, because actually his overthrow of Gaddafi triggered the migration crisis, which has since destabilized the entire continent of Europe. That's largely his fault, simply, I think, because he wanted a war in his name and he wanted to put some sort of notch in his gun for having overthrown a government. And he then did. He didn't know what he was going to replace it with or what would be the result. It's totally irresponsible. And it typified his whole attitude towards government, of relaxed, ill-informed, cavalier. And there again, he did. And there's nothing to suggest that he is going to guide this government into the ways of responsibility or safety or prosperity or anything at all. I wouldn't rely on him to do anything of the kind. When things got tough for him as leader of the Conservative Party, he pulled the ripcord of the referendum and then wandered off when he lost it. It just, there's nothing there. I don't see. He makes Blair look responsible by comparison, and coming from me, that is a very considerable insult.
Yeah, it really is. We've got a clip, I think, of David Cameron today talking about his new position and his return to government.
Well, I know it's not usual for a Prime Minister to come back in this way, but I believe in public service. The Prime Minister asked me to do this job, and it's a time where we have some daunting challenges as a country.
I mean, he doesn't look any older, which is partly slightly freaking me out. He looks exactly the same age.
Why should he? Why should he look older? Because age only makes you older when you've had some experience, but it all passes him by. Also, he doesn't even seem to know that there is a precedent for this. Douglas Hume, right, Prime Minister in 63, 64, he then came back as Foreign Secretary and actually was a very fine Foreign Secretary in the eyes of many, and is now looked back on by those who can remember him as having been quite a good Prime Minister too, which is more than you say for David Cameron. But Cameron doesn't even know. I think the world before he was born is a mystery to him. He kept going on. I remember about a British Bill of Rights, completely unaware that there already was one and had been since 1689. He didn't know what Magna Carta was. It's astonishing how people of this kind. The thing that always amazed me most about him was he somehow managed to get a first-class degree from the University of Oxford. How did it happen? Well, what is it that he knows? What is it that he understands so well that puts him in what should be the highest academic class of the country? There's never been any indication in anything he's thought or said or done that this is so. And here we just have an ineffectual and frankly weak and unexciting Prime Minister who doesn't really leave any impression on anybody. And the old joke that was told about Clement Attlee rather unfairly was that an empty taxi drew up and he got out of it. Yeah. But it's much more the case of Rishi Sunak. And what is he about? What does he stand for? What does he think? What are his opinions? What are his passions? What drives him? I'm still completely and utterly at a loss to know, because you don't get any sign, and I believe people who work with him don't get any sign. What is it that he's actually for? And now he's appropriated another political vacuum to stand his side. I remember our conversations during the Liz Truss farce. Which I suppose is something more than a year ago now, a total astonishment, standing around and saying, how can these people make it any worse than they already have? Now we find out how this is done.
They have managed that incredibly. Candice, what about Andrea Jenkins? She's come out tonight with a letter. She's the first of perhaps many, I don't know, sending a letter to the head of the 1922 committee. Basically, no confidence. We can see the letter there. No confidence in Rishi Sunak. Will this build, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know, because so many, when you're this close to an election, Conservative Party MPs can be very opportunistic and quite herd-like as well. So, I mean, unless the critical mass builds up, people will just wait and watch and see what happens, because she's quite a minor figure. Yeah. I mean, people will follow major figures, but I don't know if they'll follow minor figures.
Yes, that's an interesting point. And also...
Mike, what is this stuff about major figures?
Well,
there are no major figures.
I don't think there are any.
Party.
Well, I was going to say...
It's like this discussion of big beasts that they used to have. There are no big beasts. No. All these little furry creatures scurrying around the roots of the trees. There are no big beasts. There haven't been for years. They've all gone. These people are not... The most frightening thing about it is here we are, a nuclear power with an important economy and a large population. And the people who are in charge of it, or in charge of governing it anyway, are just produced by this weird world of professional politics. They come out of Oxford and Cambridge, they serve as special advisors, they get safe seats, and then they become ministers. Yeah. And here we see, what are they for? I'm actually scared by the
Let me ask you the next question, which is surely what we should be talking about, really, which was what I was expecting us to talk about before this morning, was the elephant in the room, which is what is actually going on in the streets of London, where you've got 300,000 people roaming around happily doing so, whether they want to break the law or not, they seem able to, whether they want to be racially inciting crowds or not, or attacking people or attacking the police, they seem able to do it. Suella Braverman, at the end of the day, was right about what she said, and she's been fired for it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm not a Suella Braverman enthusiast. The people who purport to be the right wing of the Conservative Party are not particularly coherent, say, moral or social conservatives. And in fact, one of the things that this demonstration has shown to a lot of people who are interested is a very important thing about the nature of some of the anti-Israel movement in this country, and how quite a lot of it is full of people who are prepared to shout revolting things about Auschwitz and say even fouler things about Hitler. There are people in this movement who are deeply, deeply unattractive. It's time people realise that is so, and the demonstrations have revealed it. One of the virtues of free speech and free protest is that you can see what kind of people you're living alongside. But I have to say, I used to demonstrate a lot in my Trotskyist years, and I learned a very important lesson. Demonstrations are demonstrations of impotence. You never see a demonstration by the British Road Federation or the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders or any of the really effective lobbies in this country, or the big build concrete all over the country lobby. They don't need to go on the streets and demonstrate because they have power. The people who go out on the street and demonstrate don't have any. And also 300,000 may seem big, assuming that was the figure, but it's a tiny minority of every figure you care to name. It's a minority of the adult population of London. It's a minority of the adult population of the Muslim adult population of the country. It doesn't mean half of what we thought. We shouldn't be so frightened of it. And how it took Suella Braverman so long to grasp that the police of this country are a left-wing organisation, I don't know. I've been telling everybody myself for 20 years. It's not hard to tell just by looking at them that they're not conservatives. So for her to get into a tizzy about that seems to me to be a bit absurd at this late stage. And they've been in government for 13 years. You would have thought they could have done something about the police by now in that time, but they never had any idea what was going on or much cared, and now they're saddled with the consequences of it. I have no sympathy with them at all, any of them, actually.
No, I don't wish you... I wish you didn't have any sympathy, and I wish nobody else did have any sympathy for them either. Candice, you got any sympathy for the police at this point?
No.
There you go.
I don't. I really don't. I think that, there was a really good article in the Mail Online this weekend from an anonymous police officer who said very plainly, yes, they are. They have certain subjects and certain areas that they are sensitive about and that they do not want to be seen to be policing too heavily. So this approach that they have now with the marches, afterwards they'll go on social media and they'll pick out people who've been doing dodgy things and they'll arrest them. That's the strategy, and they're going to stick with that. Right. They're comfortable with that. Yeah. That's what they want.
If this is their last throw of the dice, it's pretty poor, isn't it?
I don't think I've ever seen such an open declaration of defeat and purposelessness than this. I was astonished as the morning progressed that there was no redeeming feature to it at all. I don't think I have any idea what to do or what they're doing. David Cameron does not appeal, I don't think, to anybody much in the country. He is remembered for all kinds of things. As you rightly point out, the Greensill affair, on which he was, I think, criticised quite strongly by a parliamentary select committee, will haunt him, and Labour will make sure it haunts him through any election, and indeed all the time. That won't do him any good. The recollection of his clear association with staying in the European Union in a government which is supposed to be committed to leaving it is always going to be a drag on everything it does. I don't see William Hague either as being a particular recommendation to any government. What's his enormous record success that he can draw on. It's just what remains of the top establishment of the Tory party, which existed before the referendum, before the Johnson revolution. I think Theresa May has also joined in with her recommendations. If you were trying to compile a list of recommendations you would not want, right. We are getting that now. And I don't think they have not got a clue. And we will see this more and more. And so the government will spiral down the plug hole, down the famous gurgler, until the moment comes when it has to hold a general election. And as I say, I think there is, on this occasion, because of this chaos and feebleness and lack of serious direction, a real danger that the Conservative Party might finally start breaking up into its component parts.
It may well do.
I have a Conservative Get Me Out Here is going to be on television quite soon, isn't it?
Well, there's a cast of thousands for that, I would imagine, because they're all trying to jump ship so they can get jobs if there's an election in May, by the looks of things. So
well, just for that, though, there may even be some who think, I can't stand this any longer.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. Let me just ask you one final question. Last time we spoke last week, Peter, you said that you thought, yes, of course, the pro-Palestine marches should go ahead. They should not be stopped. Has what happened this weekend changed your view on that?
No, completely not. As I say, I think it was very educational for people to see just what nasty people, really not terribly distinguishable from actual Nazis, turn up on these things. And if you're going to go along as an innocent-hearted person who simply wants to make a point about the bad treatment of Arabs by Israel or something of that kind, just bear in mind who you will be marching with in future. There are a lot of these people about. I don't know how many. There's no measurement being made, but they're there, and it's quite plain. The organisers of the demonstration can't control them or keep them away, and they say the most revolting things. And I think if we hadn't allowed the demonstration to go ahead, we wouldn't know this. They weren't empowered by being on the streets, but they were given the opportunity to shoot their horrible mouths off, and they told us, this is what we are. And this is what an awful lot of the opposition to Israel consists of, a straightforward, old-fashioned, racist, bigoted hatred of Jews of a kind which we all thought had come to an end or had been too ashamed to show its face after the death camps were opened in 1945. But it's still there. OK, now they've shown themselves. Now we know. No one can pretend anymore that they're not there. And that's one of the virtues of free speech. You know what you're up against.
But how much of that then becomes a problem if people are getting attacked, as we saw? Some people were getting jostled. You know, Michael Gove was chased down the street. We had people being shouted at in restaurants, in fast food joints, told to take off poppies, told to take off, you know, other things that they were wearing. You know, at what point does it become an issue so that you say, well, hang on, you can't be doing that every single weekend in the centre of London?
Well, you can't, and I think it's interesting when I think back to the Vietnam demonstrations I took part in. They certainly went every week. They were separated often by long periods of months, sometimes years. I really don't see how these people can continue turning out week after week after week. They must get fatigued by it themselves. But we can't stop them on the grounds that they've been out too much. I think let them get tired of it would, again, be my view. When people step out of line in the ways that you described, the police should intervene immediately, because if someone is intimidated, as Michael Gove was, then the law is being broken. And if people are calling for the deaths of others or inciting violence anyway, the law is being broken and you can do something about it. But that's not the same as preventing people from speaking and preventing people from marching just because you don't like them. Because there are many, many good reasons for not doing that. And one of them is, I say, you learn from seeing them what they're really like.
Yes, I think that's a very valuable lesson as well. Peter, great to talk to you as ever. Thank you very much indeed